Yes! Finally! Oh, that took forever!
It could have been worse. You could have had to play the board game again.
I am Doomsvince, and this is day 160 of Spawn Year.
I feel pathetic, and it's not just because I had to beat an absurdly monotonous Game Boy game to prevent myself from being buried alive. That shouldn't even count as harder, it just takes longer to kill everything. Frankly, I'm not sure that's even the most embarrassing way I've had to keep myself above ground this year. No, I feel pathetic because I'm actually relieved, perhaps even a little elated, to be returning to the main Spawn title. I couldn't wait to get a break from this madness when I began my animated series Odyssey, but after that many days of Curse of the Spawn, I feel like I've gained some perspective. When last we saw Spawn, he was preparing for a possible new path away from his old habits of stalking his widow and blaming his old best friend for things that aren't his fault, and maybe something slightly resembling redemption, like at the end of the HBO show. From the not-so-subtle cover of this issue, that seems to be exactly McFarlane's intention. Then you get into the book itself, and Spawn going off to reclaim his humanity becomes something good and noble and, I don't know, someone I might be inclined to want to keep reading about, even if I wasn't trapped in a graveyard where that's all there is to do, is relegated to an option. Cogliostro finally starts explaining stuff, more or less in plain English. After throwing Spawn one more token, you have to learn to ask the right questions. Man, if I had a dime for every time he said that. And as much as I'm sick of Spawn's word balloon settings being stuck on exclamation point at the end of every sentence, he's totally justified this time when he screams, "Enough!" Cog takes Spawn to the Museum of Hellspawn artifacts that no one has conveniently ever considered visiting that was also in the animated series, and tells him he somehow broke Malbolge's hold on him a bazillion years ago, but he's cursed to walk the earth for eternity because now neither heaven nor hell will take him. Cog tells Spawn he needs to learn about his past to move forward, but this cavern filled with Spawn paraphernalia, hey, I've got one of those, just serves as atmosphere. The only relic they even take a gander at is the ribbons of an angel Cog once slayed that attacked Spawn. I like that Cog says, at least this time you remembered not to touch the lance, like not making the most bumbling idiot choice ever twice means Spawn's finally making real progress. No, he's right, for Spawn, I guess that is progress. Spawn wants to know what happened to him in the green world, and Cog says he doesn't know, but says that it dropped the scales from Spawn's eyes, and now he's finally ready to know the truth about what he is and his potential. I really resist the way McFarlane and Holguin are handling this. Spawn is finally being less of an impulsive child, facing the reality of being a Hellspawn, and showing some interest in the lore and mythology of Hell, which he just ignored in his epic denial before, and the man gets no credit for that. This is consistent with how this character has always been handled. His choices are only his when they're emotionally driven and irresponsible, I guess because it's dramatic to contrive consequences for these actions and too difficult to allow Spawn to learn from those mistakes and derive new dramatic situations from something else. Whenever Spawn actually accomplishes something, it's almost never of his own accord. It's either instinct, the costume taking over, or random happenstance. This would have been a perfect opportunity to allow Spawn to see how monumentally important he is to the future of everything. Let it sober him up, and he would naturally choose to proactively take responsibility for himself. This reads like Spawn being reasonable isn't character development so much as divine intervention. Like the universe itself sees how stubborn and careless Spawn is and has to fundamentally change his thinking to force him to cooperate with Cog and finally have the conversation that really should have happened in the first 20 issues, not 5 years after the book first launched. Why is it so hard to let Spawn evolve like a normal person to the point where a standard, necessary narrative opportunity for change is another convoluted plot contrivance? So Cog tells Spawn he thinks he may be the one, just as God once called him to end the celestial battle. Again, I'm assuming he thinks that because because of the prophecy and not because he sees any unusual strength of character from Spawn. Cog says neither side has any interest in ending the war, which made me scratch my head. If both heaven and hell know Al is supposed to play a big part in the apocalypse, why would Bulgy make him a Hellspawn if he didn't want the war to end? Why facilitate Al's importance? Hey, maybe that's why his plans have been so all over the place. Maybe Bulgy's trying to frustrate the One into uselessness. Keep it up, Bulgy. That's working great. Cog's motivations are both less noble and less interesting than in the TV show. He's not interested in helping a Spawn regain his humanity or regaining his own honor. This isn't a redemption story as the cover might lead you to believe. He's looking for a loophole to get into heaven. Spawn, he says, has two choices to try to end the war. He can risk losing his humanity completely and build his powers to their fullest capacity and kill Malbolgia and take his place in hell, or he can try to find favor with heaven, which Cog doesn't believe will help because they're prolonging the war too. I've also really got to wonder why Cog never tried to kill Malbolgia and take his place himself. So here's another enormous plot point that's clearly an afterthought. Why did Cog try to help Spawn master his emotions and control his costume just to finally say, okay, now that you're less of a hothead, I need you to let all that evil consume you so you can become the devil? And gee, I wonder which path our stalwart hero is gonna choose. Meanwhile, Sam drags Twitch into the alleys for the 1000th time to find Spawn, and Twitch gets another potentially fatal wound, gunned down by somebody. There's also a genuinely sad subplot about Bobby becoming truly lost now that the Angels have taken Bootsy, and he hits his lowest point when he takes a bottle of booze off a dead friend. Dwayne Turner fills in for Capullo this issue, and he's a good stand-in. His art actually looks quite a bit like Capullo's, and he's differentiating a lot from his Curse of the Spawn work. This issue was more logically structured and deliberately plotted than usual, but I'm disappointed that even major epiphanies and important character growth are plot-driven here. Maybe I'll beat that Game Boy game on hard again to take my mind off it. Signed, Captain Logan.